Ooh. Have you ever been shopping?
Women be shopping, baby.
And you're looking at only the finest of fits, arranging the most deft of drips, when suddenly the air of only slightly homoerotic jovialism is broken by a random salesperson. Approaching, asking you if there's anything they can help you find. Now sure, they may think you're stealing. Crime is an issue. That's totally fine, and it's not like the boys are dressing up when they're copping the new Yeezys. I really hope I'm getting these terms correct. Don't old man cancel me, okay? But this troll, this troglodyte, this wormtongue, is breaking the atmosphere and creasing the vibe. Okay, I know that's not a term. I know that one. For possibly an even worse, ultimately more devastating reason. To sell you something. Now listen, I know that we gotta get that bag, okay? But forming entire industries, including their necessary support infrastructures, such as sales, promotes literal evil as a job. First, ask yourself what kind of person goes into sales as a career and actually likes it. Then ask yourself why the fuck we ever made a profession out of bilking old ladies out of their heart pill money in the first place, when every single statistic you can find says that the best method for selling a product is not just the quality, but filling the need and word of mouth. So why do we still market like we need aggressive sales to sell things? Because we built the entire house of shit bricks, and if we want it to stop, we have to take it apart brick by brick. So, with that being said, I'm Goose, and I'll be handling those bricks right there with you, ensuring we both wash our hands before eating. Join me, won't you? Before I get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to make sure that I define scam in this video, if I even use the word to reference these companies, as simply a predatory and often legally overcomplicated contract-based method of selling unnecessary shit to customers that don't need and often can't even afford it, just to make sure I cover my ass defamatorily. Also, fuck your Stanley mug, I am a Yeti man. Not a sponsor, but if any logistics companies out there do sponsorships, that sounds weird, but you never know. I think there's sponsorships for like pill pockets. I don't know, it could be a thing. Get at me. So as I said before, often one of the best ways to sell things is through word of mouth. Even all the big companies and all the corporations, weird emphasis, know these things. Though a lot of them, especially sales companies or companies that handle business to business sales, kind of twist that formula a little bit. Sometimes even going so far as to pay money for fake reviews or puffed up view counts or things like that. Followers on Twitter, X, whatever the site's called, everybody hates it. And even sometimes hiring marketing professionals or social media specialists or social media managers to pose as influencers and artificially inflate their numbers and clicks in order to get them followers and then sell the items directly to those followers. It's shady. And yes, that is actually a thing. The spirit, however, is that if you educate yourself on a product and know it inside and out, and if it's got great quality and is consistent in that quality, then the product will tend to sell itself. Oh no, the product will tend to fill a need that it's intended for, almost entirely by itself. The job, and ideally the desire of the owner of that product then, is to tell other people about the great quality and about the great customer service and about the great reliability and about the consistent quality of that product that will then again aid in it selling itself. This kind of sales methods is a huge thing for me and a lot of the way that I like to conduct myself when I'm running a business, which is sort of how we should look at sales in a vacuum, but that isn't quite the reality. Basically, if your product or service is good, it will sell with little to no need for any marketing budget, and some companies pay as much as 30% of their entire budget to market. A company local to me pays $30K a month, and that's straight up insane, and they're still failing. Now, most consulting firms would tell you that I'm full of shit. Most hedge fund business owners, even most people in general, either have a vested interest or have been led to believe that you need Fortune 500 big billion-dollar company methods in order just to sell things because that's the way to survive. For this reason, anyone that tells you that you need an aggressive sales or marketing strategy is selling something, weirdly and legally soundly. And this might not have anything to do with the actual scamming that happens, but let's look at some of these businesses just for shits and giggles, why don't we? I'm over here now. To connect the dots, let's talk about two particular methods of sales. Foot in the door sales, which is a door-to-door or cold sales method where you make the customer believe they need the product that you're selling, or you create a scenario like throwing dirt on the floor, or as you often see in infomercials, having too many unorganized cabinets or hard-skinned tomatoes. Once you identify the problem, you offer the solution, which is your product or service. The other type that I'm gonna address is consultative sales, which kind of falls under the same umbrella as B2B sales or business-to-business sales, where you talk to a prospective customer or other business, get an idea of their need, like marketing, HR, operations, and system development, and then you find a way to take your product and make it fit that mold, and you service their need and offer them a comparable product/service. The entire industry is like most industries. It's a tightly woven web of interconnected businesses that all support each other, and these third parties are being formed and worked in, like companies that like Workday and ICIMX and all those Aramark, all those companies that hire people to businesses to use, but sort of under their umbrella because they're a third party. They're cropping up and sort of weaving their way into this interconnected web of all businesses that support each other, making there a need for them to exist, which is bad, by the way, in case that doesn't make any sense. And this is bad because it's getting more and more complicated to perform oversight and to have the right regulations in order to protect both workers and consumers from these big businesses that use questionable practices. That's a legally sound way of describing it, right? In a vacuum, sales tactics don't really need to be any more than just information that you provide to someone that you hope in turn will convince them to buy your product. The problem is, very straight up, is that people lie. We lie to each other, we lie to ourselves, and sales is an industry where lies are often very unchecked, as they're very nuanced and uncontextualized, and you're often encouraged to exaggerate truths, and this misinformation and these training methods easily spread. We have passed laws over time to protect consumers, and even have consumer advocacy services that exist to combat scams. But the problem is that these people make a ton of money, and we have public companies who have public shareholding services that handle the money from their stakeholders, who all have tons of money, who all employ the same advertising and marketing and consulting firms and legal firms that all support each other. All of these companies get together and hire lobbyist firms that then advocate on their behalf to lawmakers to develop laws in such a way that excludes the companies they represent, which is all of them, from oversight and culpability. This is a real conspiracy that I really wish the right wing was as obsessed with uncovering as I am. Not using that term legally. This is the real underground industry that builds itself off of lying to people who literally keep them in business, and treat workers, again, who keep them in business with the same amount of respect. These guys do slavery, y'all, like, come on. So what's another reason why all of this is bad? Well, because if you as a business get successful through lying, whether it's little white lies or exaggerations about your product, creating a false need or creating a problem that nobody has and trying to fill that void and trying to sell that to people, etc. That then becomes your baseline strategy for success. And what if other businesses who want to see the same success as you ask you how you did it, like say the magazine Fortune, for instance? Maybe they'll put you at the top of some kind of a list of perhaps 100 or 200 or maybe 500 of the most successful businesses out there. Maybe there's 10 or 20 other companies that run the same lies, and they're all baseline using lies as success methods, and that all gets handed down. And now smaller businesses use the same consulting firms, and they use the same strategies, making lying the entire industry's standard operating procedure as a baseline method for selling things. It's like starting a relationship with an English accent. You've set up your character and you've lied in the first thing you've said, and now you've got to keep it going. The entire thing falls apart. Aside from all that stinky lying, sales techniques are often predatory, and that's being quite conservative, as some can turn out to just be straight up pyramid schemes hiding under some complicated legal umbrella like vacuum, knife, makeup, and essential oils companies that still continue to run legally even though we all know, you know. Companies use large cattle call hiring methods just like pyramid schemes. Coincidence? to hire employees at high advertised salaries, but with very little information or transparency on the job role or responsibilities, and with the pay being highly subjective to the performance of the worker, which they don't tend to say until you're already there at the interview, which if you've ever gone to a timeshare pitch or a sensitivity training, then that's what they're like. Also, oddly reminiscent of a pyramid scheme. Coincidence? Probably. These, I guess, contract, commission only, kinda but not really jobs, usually consist of team leaders who are the weasels who manage to hang on to the pyramid long enough to move up, who then take the new blood on these sort of canvassing trips. They make you go to their office, hop on one of their vans, and then get assigned a neighborhood. And you're supposed to now go door to door and sell the product. In my case, it was once vacuums and again with knives. Same method though. They trained you exactly the same way. The training itself is very ridiculous, and you're more or less instructed to put a literal foot in the door while trying to convince complete strangers to let you into their home to either vacuum something or cut something. I'll just drop the most obvious hint here that I didn't pick up at the time, I'll admit, and say that if things feel wrong to you, it's because they are, and also because it could get worse. And it did. When you get inside the house and are able to do your routine for some old lady to buy a vacuum that's over $2,000 that she can't even lift, who only the company can maintenance, with special filters only the company can replace, keeping her dependent on that company forever, you know, which it may not be too much longer because she can't buy her heart pills now, which is why you see a lot of that brand name insert here in Goodwill stores and nobody ever buys them. Not only did you sell it to her, but when you're on the ground team, you're also in charge of handling customer feedback, apparently, with zero training. And this is the moment that I decided I wasn't going back to that particular position, but the guy who I was partnered with was the team lead, color me lucky. He had gotten a call that a customer wanted to return something, and they happened to live in that neighborhood. So we go to the door, and I shit you not, the absolute piece of human garbage gets aggressive with the old lady and stands over her, taking the vac out of her hand while she's bringing it to us to return, and she can barely lift the thing. He takes it out and assembles it and tests the thing and says that there's no reason that she needs to return it. He offers her free service on it, free refills on the filters, and she tells us that she just can't afford the payments she's been making. This thing is on fucking layaway, and this woman is using her social security to pay for it, like, my god. And I basically had to drag the guy out of there. I told him I'm absolutely not cool with this method of selling and that I quit. I was so angry on the ride home that I got a speeding ticket. Even the policeman who heard my story when I told him in the hopes that I would get out of the ticket sympathized. He still wrote me the ticket. Now, I will say that my own experience is not indicative of an entire industry. I will concede that, but there are plenty of accounts online from people who had been parts of pyramid schemes or had been taken by sales contracts. Like on Reddit, there's a sub for Huns, which is the derogatory term used to indicate pyramid scheme sellers, as they usually start their Facebook messages with, "Hey hun," and just like if you want to see more, like do the Google, there's plenty of stuff there, or whatever. I don't know. See what I do about it, and I will absolutely list a link of some commonly predatory companies that use sales tactics that are questionable at the bottom, so you will have plenty of stuff to read. But the takeaway here is that not only does the sales industry and its supporting network of third parties lie as an overall baseline, allegedly, but they're engaging in highly questionable and arguably predatory staffing measures and selling practices. That really sounds like how I would describe a pyramid scheme. It's just so weird. It's so strange. You know, it's probably a coincidence, allegedly. What all this ends up looking like, and why I'm even here today, not alive, but making this video, is that today in 2024, what all this looks like is huge companies like Amazon and Uber using these predatory tactics to both sell and hire, with both companies also being involved in business development and consulting, both of them using the same tactics, allegedly, that pyramid schemes use, and both of which having a huge wealth of consultation companies and third parties whose survival themselves depends on these same tactics and therefore must circle the wagons whenever legislation comes a-callin'. That's why it's a problem. And it's like a problem for all of us, okay? This ain't political jack. This is my fucking bread and butter. Fucking corporations aren't people, you know? Hack the planet, whatever, you know? The liberal sayings. Now, considering all this kerfuffle that it would take likely 100 years and fully organized and progressive majority in government for the duration in order to get the oversight and retooling it needs to fully stop the runaway train that is shitty sales tactics, let's ask ourselves in the end, do these tactics even work any better than any other? The short answer is a big old nope. To support that, I'll simply remind you of any time that you as a consumer were at a shop or a high-end store and the salesperson just made it their mission in life to sell you something you neither came in for nor want. Do you get turned off by the whole thing? Well, think of that from a business's point of view, okay? A security company links a local business an article on how crime is rising. Turns out to be a slight exaggeration because news sensationalizes, right? And they pressure you and annoy you with phone calls, emails, they've got reps coming in, and finally break you down so that you get a security door and its quality sucks and you've got to call them to repair it, and overall it ends up being more of a loss than any other kind of peace of mind, but you're locked in now, usually to a shitty contract that you can't get out of without paying some huge penalty fee, just like a timeshare, which are very close to what I would describe as pyramid schemes. Weird. Now imagine a step higher than that. Imagine like the expansion or business development side of things. Amazon sees Frisbees selling from Frank's Frisbees and tells him that they can get a much higher exposure on their site. They get him on, earning a percentage, and but he's locked into an exclusivity contract, and now he can only sell through Amazon. Now he ends up with too much on hand because, funnily enough, a month later, Amazon has come out with the same design as Frank's Frisbees. It's so weird. It's so weird how that happens. And now they're selling it at 20% less. And now he can't afford his payments. He's got too much stock on hand and he can't sell to anybody else because of the contract. And now Frank's Frisbees is now bought by Amazon in a last-minute ditch effort to get rid of the sinking ship. It's not just a natural foods company that I have previously worked at does very close to the same thing. Back when it was at the height of its popularity, I talked to a few cattle farmers and fishers that signed on with third-party companies who, through contract, sold exclusively to this grocery company. This is a bit complicated, again, but bear with me as it'll make sense because of the previous example. They could operate and they could sell to that distribution company, the third party, but they could only sell to that company, meaning that if they had too much product, which if you know any farmers or ranchers, they tend to have enough yield that they want to try and diversify where they're selling to so that it all gets sold and they're not just sitting on it. But because of this contract, they could not legally sell anywhere else except through this one company that exclusively sold to this one type of store. This one type of store only had a couple hundred locations and only had about 15 or 16 within its specific given region. This huge increase to days on hand put huge pressure on cattle farmers, chicken farmers, ranchers of all kinds, vegetables and fruit farmers, and caused a lot of them to both ruin their reputations and ruin their businesses. The same thing happened with organic certification, and if you are a internet sleuth like I am, then you can follow the breadcrumbs. They are there. This company even tells on itself, okay? One of the things that they pride themselves on is giving loans to small businesses, in some cases to help obtain an organic certification. This often entails paying for the certification, which in the state that I am from is a minimum of $75,000. Now, this is money they have to pay back, and a lot of farmers do not see revenue streams that high for a very long time, even after expanding to a larger market. But the problem is that these makers and producers of these goods and these farmers are all locked into exclusivity contracts. So if their product is for some reason not as popular, let's say in Illinois as it is in California, then you've got to eat the cost of that lost product, or you've got to make it up somehow in production. And if you're not making the money, you can't hire the staff and you can't run the business. If the product doesn't sell off the shelves in general, you're going to end up with too much product on hand. It's going to spoil, or you're going to have to find another way to sell it because you're in an exclusivity contract. So then you've got a dead business, and guess what? And guess what happens next? If my smarmy grin is any indicator. This company whose owner claims to only make $1 a year, by the way, which fuck him, would then swoop in at the seller's darkest hour to buy them out entirely, which in some cases wouldn't even cover the loan they were given and are still contractually obligated to pay. They can declare bankruptcy, but good luck owning a business. Oh God, I almost knocked that over, for the next 7 years. Unless you disband the LLC and make a new one, because for some reason corporations are people in America. I don't know who made that law. Probably Republicans. That was biased. I'll admit that. I'm comfortable with that. Man, my voice is just, I don't know why my voice is going away. I too much weed? Make me cuckoo in my brains? Cuckoo brains? Now, not to go too far off onto a tangent, but this is exactly what the general public doesn't quite understand about tipping culture in America and why it's kind of required to be the way that it is, in this country at least. I know that it sucks to think that you're personally paying someone's salary, and I know that that's the usual argument against it, but listen here, Johnny Public. Oh, the reason you can't just get rid of tipping is because if I end tipping at my burger joint and pay my staff good wages, I'll probably have to raise the burger price $1, right? Just as a hypothetical. Let's say I did the math and I need to raise the burger price $1, a single dollar. Well, literally every single other burger place in the town has a cheaper burger. I've instantly killed my business, okay? People don't see it as just ending tips, which, great, they didn't want to do it in the first place, but now you've set the expectations that tipping is optional and you've burned bridges with other owners as well. I'll even let you in on another big dirty secret. The majority of those people who advocate for tips to stay are people who work at restaurants. The argument being pretty reasonable that they can earn much more than a normal wage on any busy shift. And I'll cop to that. It's usually the back of the house that gets screwed. And I'd argue that the disparity is more the cause of the labor system, some systemic racism, classism, and not necessarily the idea of tipping out a coworker, which is ultimately more shitty. Rant over. Sales. So the question was, does sales even work? No. Even the National Association of Sales Professionals says on its own website that empathy and gentle sales tactics are the most effective and the most well received. They also address predatory sales tactics as the standard baseline, and there are more of them. I've linked the article. The idea behind that shadiness being that companies largely are too big to fail, and they've diversified their marketing so well that one can't pin down a certain specific method of sales that works better than any other. And it's likely that any numbers that support what big companies are putting out are biased or literally their survival depends on that big company's survival as well. But if we look at historical data, we still see that word of mouth and passive ad placement is usually the best way to get click-through for your products. Direct sales remaining at the bottom of the list, with the companies that have gone out of business, either because of their practices or because of the shitty sales they had, are the proof in the crappy pudding. Again, on this, I would always encourage you to do your own fact-checking. Here are some searches that might help you along with that particular subject. Failed door-to-door sales companies, and companies that used questionable sales tactics, and things of that nature. I promise there's a wealth of info, and I've linked what I can at the bottom, but please try to directly find some sources yourself. So in the end, I think that we're asking ourselves the questions like, well, what the hell can we do about it? I mean, sadly, these huge companies kind of have a stranglehold on commerce in general, and the third parties that support them are, again, dependent on their success. These markets are very lucrative for investors, and the systems that they are built upon find their way into other non-consumer, more social and service-oriented industries like bars and restaurants, which is exactly the reason why we have ghost kitchens and business packages for inexperienced foreign owners who either have to overstay visas or leave the country altogether when their badly constructed businesses and business models that they were sold on as being statistically superior ultimately fail because they were either lied to or because they were preyed upon. Well, I guess those are similar things, which is a phenomenon that could seriously be a video all on its own. It's seriously endemic. Either way, it seems like it's all salesmen creating a product to fit a need and almost always lying to do it, and then predating upon fear or insecurity to get you all dick hard for their stuff. Again, evil. So honestly, I don't think there's much that we can do other than write our lawmakers and and appeal to them to enter legislation that improves oversight on larger companies and introduce more systems that allow allow for grievances to be heard. Honestly, though, as corrupt as some of those unions are, I would say that's probably the best solution for getting your voice heard and making sure that you are represented by someone that's got your interests in mind, even if it is slightly organized crime-ish, perhaps a little bit. Who knows? I'm not saying nothing. I don't know. I know it sucks out there. I know it sucks out there. That's something that I do know. And I really wish that I had the power to make things different, but you know, that's why I'm putting this on here, so that it gets out there and y'all can do whatever you want with it. Personally, I'm going to try to make sure that any businesses that I run, I try to run as transparently and ethically as possible, and that'll be my part, I guess. Anywho, I'm Goose. Like and sub and all that, and that's about all I got for you.